Hello everyone, Gaara here once again. Welcome to another card review video. In today's video I'm gonna cover 4 brand new cards of the upcoming expansion. And without further ado, let's get right into it. The very first card we have is the Ice Walker. It is a mage class minion. It is a 2 mana 1/3 elemental and it has the effect your hero power also freezes the target. I see a lot of people talk about this card on Reddit and they really like this card, especially people that come from Magic the Gathering, because this effect is actually quite popular in that game and is used oftentimes over actual removal cards, just because you can freeze or like disable a big minion over the course of multiple turns. I think this card is quite interesting. I don't think the stat line of this card is strong enough for competitive play, but this might be a very interesting arena card, because if you can't deal with a bigger minion, and 2 mana minions are actually very popular and very wanted in arena, this doesn't have like the greatest stats to deal with other common 2-drop, but disabling a big minion can be quite a big deal, especially if you want to set up removal cards like Flame Strike or Volcanic Potions, Blizzard, Meteor and all that stuff. What is very interesting about this card for standard is that it is an elemental and it is a 2-drop, and that might be important for the new Jaina hero class card. It might be important for the elemental archetype, for elemental mages. And yeah, it's very interesting, and the effect is very interesting because it also works with cards like Shatter. Sometimes you have the option to discover Shatter from Primordial Glyph or Kabbalist Tomes. You just get it, or from Bubbling Books, but you don't really have a good use for it because you don't really want to waste your Frostbolts for the Shatter. If you play this minion in your deck, you have another way to utilize it. Maybe we get so many freeze effects that we want to run Shatter in your deck. So it is definitely an interesting card. It is not garbage. It has a lot of different uses. It might be a card that we want to play in elemental decks, and definitely it's nice to have multiple elementals to choose from, so we don't have the classic like 6 elementals like the Tar Creeper, which we just have to auto-include just because there are no better elementals, or the Firefly. So it's very cool to have cards like these just to choose from to adjust to our playstyle. And the next card we have is the Bolvar Fireblood, one of the most epic characters in the Warcraft lore. It is a 5 mana 1/7 Paladin legendary, so basically the same stats as the old Bolvar that rotated out. It has Divine Shield, and after friendly minion loses Divine Shield, gain +2 attack. So this has a very harsh condition. This card is pretty weak as a standalone. Obviously 5 mana 1/7 stats are too low, way too low, but it has Divine Shield, but that doesn't really make up for it. And after minion loses Divine Shield, so that's a pretty rough condition. But Paladin is getting a lot of Divine Shields, and it is getting a lot of cards with similar effects like this, like the 4 mana weapon that gains attack as well as soon as a minion loses Divine Shield. So there it might spawn a new archetype like Divine Shield Aggro Paladin, where you would want to run a card like this, just because yeah, you just remove so many Divine Shields, and as soon as you buff this card by, let's say, 4 attack, then it is a 5 mana 5/7 with Divine Shield, and that is suddenly pretty strong. So in an aggressive Murloc Divine Shield Paladin deck or something like that, this doesn't look like a good control card, because you would not want to run a lot of Divine Shield minions in a control Paladin deck, and it also looks more like a tempo card. So in aggressive Paladin decks, this might see play. The next one is another card I forgot to cover yesterday. It is the Doomed Apprentice. It is another mage card. It is a 3 mana 3/2. In it reads the text, your opponent's spells cost 1 more. Very interesting effect. So another baby lore tap. We're getting more cards with the effect to increase the opponent's mana cost of spells, which is very interesting. This effect is especially interesting in more aggressive decks, because then it actually matters. Every single mana cost matters. And that is, yeah, it's like the sister of the Sorcerer's Apprentice, which is a 2 mana 3/2. You can play this even as a follow-up, so your spells are cheaper and your opponent's spells are more expensive. This might be a big deal if you have a tempo lead. Yeah, it is an interesting card. It doesn't do as much as a Kirin Tornado for 3 mana, but this effect might be good enough to protect your board. One additional turn you gain where your opponent can't use his Brawl or whatever can be actually quite impactful on the game. So I can't say this card is everything but broken, but it might actually see play as a tech card in some aggressive decks. And the final card we have is the Meat Wagon. It is a 4 mana 1/4 mech, which is very interesting to see a new mech. Definitely will summon a minion from your deck with less attack than this minion. So there's very few minions that you can summon with 0 attack in your deck. Shaman has actually the best ones with the totems. You can get Mana Tide, Flametongue Totem, but if your opponent can remove this card and control like when this card dies, then he can kill the Mana Tide afterwards immediately, which shouldn't be too hard because it has 0 attack. Then this is pretty bad, and this card becomes more interesting if you play a lot of buffs. Then you can get bigger minions out of your deck, but it's still very random. So if you buff this with let's say Blessing of Kings and then it dies, suddenly you can get stronger minions out of your deck, but it is high variance. You don't automatically get a minion with 5 attack, then you can still get a Doomsayer out of your deck, and huge variance. All sorts of minions you can pull even if you buff this. I think this card is unplayable in Constructed. It's interesting in Wild because it is another mech and it is a 4 mana mech, so you can get this out of a Sky Golem, and yeah, then you pull this, and with this you pull like another mech, which is quite cool, I guess. Interesting effect, you can pull a Validated Doomsayer, which usually is a really bad card. But yeah, it's very strong because usually it should be hard for your opponent to deal with this and then with a minion with so much health like the Validated Doomsayer. But this sounds too gimmicky, too unreliable, bad if your opponent has board control, and I don't think this will see play, but very interesting effect regardless. And it is a definitely minion, so maybe it will have some impact because of all the definitely minions we can generate from random cards like the Gravedigger. So that's it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. As always, I'll be back tomorrow, hopefully with another batch of 5 cards or more. Thank you guys so much for watching, subscribing and following. Thank you once again, and see you guys tomorrow. Peace.